All right, if you like reading, then you're in the right place. I pulled 10 of probably my favorite books from my real estate library for real estate developers. And, this is a fairly unconventional list because most of these books aren't actually about real estate development. A real estate developer is more than just a builder, someone that shows up at a house or a construction site and builds something. We're leaders, we're product creators who serve a market and specific clients. We're visionaries who always push the envelope and aim to innovate. We're business people who must be able to juggle wearing multiple hats, manage our time, manage employees, subcontractors, lending relationships, investors, deadlines, local politics, and loads of pressure at every stage of the project. We're members of communities which we aim to improve through good design and amenities. So for me, as I level up my development business, I'm constantly tapping into the vast knowledge out there, not just on real estate development, but on every aspect of my life and my abilities, from leadership to negotiation to time management and delegation. I'm also constantly seeking wisdom and inspiration from people who have done it before me, from people who have pursued huge outsized visions and succeeded wildly, but also those who failed, because there are always lessons to be learned there from their failures. So this list, in no particular order, is, I think, highly relevant to you if you are developing real estate, but also if you're just a real estate investor or any kind of business person for that matter. Okay, so let's get going. Number one, if you don't know who William ZIndorf was, the guy was an absolute legend in terms of, I guess I should hold it up like this, right? In terms of real estate development. This guy did deals on a level that is absolutely wild. He was a visionary in terms of seeing paths of growth, viewing development through macro and micro lenses, and was a grand master when it came to structuring deals. He developed a huge chunk of Manhattan, including the United Nations site, but he was also very active in other markets, including Denver and Canada. But he also blew up in the end. He was careless with his debt with partners and basically just took whatever money he could find to get the deals done, and in the end he lost everything. If you want to be reminded to think bigger, much bigger, this is a great book. But there are also a ton of lessons here, both positive and cautionary. Book number 2. This one is one of my favorite real estate books, hands down, and it's an easy read. In the 1970s, the entire state of Florida was virtually unsettled. Other than a few towns in the north bordering Georgia, like St. Augustine and Jacksonville, the state pretty much consisted of swampland. There were almost no roads to speak of, no industry, nothing. The book opens up with the story of Henry Flagler, who at 52 was retired after co-founding Standard Oil with John Rockefeller. After retiring from Standard Oil, he moved to Florida and literally developed the entire freaking state, consolidating railroads and starting up towns that later became Palm Beach, Miami, and others. What follows is a story of 4 developers who essentially developed Florida almost from scratch, picking up the torch from Flagler. Miami Beach, Palm Beach, Tampa, Coral Gables, they were dredged up from the ocean, built on vast citrus plantations, and generally just created out of thin air. It's incredible. I didn't know this history of Florida before I read this book, but this book is not just inspiring in terms of what's possible, but it is also a cautionary tale. Each of the 4 developers reached incredible heights of success and wealth, and then lost everything when the real estate bubble of the 1920s popped, bringing down the rest of the country and bringing on the Great Depression. It's a cautionary tale about leverage, greed, lack of risk controls, and chasing more and more and more without the regard for the downside. All right. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. This is probably the single best book on negotiation I've read to this day. Chris Foss used to be an FBI hostage negotiator, and the techniques, strategies, and concepts he shares in this book can be applied to every area of your life, including real estate. Concepts like tactical empathy, labeling, mirroring, accusation audits, and the behavioral change steroid model. The list goes on. I think a lot of people at this point probably read this book because he's become quite famous, but if you haven't, this is an absolute must for your ability to negotiate anything in life, including real estate. Number 4, very simple book to read, but very powerful. We're business people, including us developers, and we keep reinventing the wheel. We keep making the same mistakes over and over again. We keep missing things. I'm speaking in broad strokes here, but you can probably relate. If you and I miss something on the project, it's not life or death. It just costs us time, a little money, and some headaches. Meanwhile, there are 2 industries in particular that this book draws stories and lessons from that literally hold our lives in their hands. It's medicine and airlines. If they miss something, people die. So how did mortality rates during surgeries and commercial airline accidents get reduced dramatically? You'll be shocked. That's not fancy new technology. It's not, and it's, by the way, it's not technology at all. It's checklists. Simple paper checklists. People used to fail because of lack of knowledge or info. Not anymore. Most failures occur right now in our daily lives and businesses, not because of a lack of knowledge, but because we fail to apply that knowledge consistently and thoroughly. After reading this book, we started implementing checklists into every business we run: software, education, property management, real estate development. And the results have been very powerful. We're not there yet. We're getting better every day, but it works. And also, FYI, this book does talk specifically about real estate development and draws lessons from construction as well. It's a very interesting read. Development and construction is one area where good checklists are absolutely crucial and have helped us a ton. All right, book number 5. I have, and as you can tell, I'm a physical book kind of guy. I read books, I earmark them, I add them to my library. I don't do ebooks, I don't do online. So, Missing Middle Housing. This is fairly straightforward, but I think an important book. Missing middle housing is what we build in my business. It's everything that sits between a single family home on one end and of the spectrum and the big box apartment buildings on the other end. It's duplexes, triplexes, quads, courtyard apartment buildings, bungalow courts, townhomes, live workspaces, etc. It's housing that used to be very common in cities before 1940s, when these cities developed naturally. Single-family zoning reform that became the norm starting in 1940s made this type of housing harder and harder to build and to develop. But this is exactly the type of housing that we need more of. More affordable than single-family homes, more conducive to walkable environments, more conducive to true community building. So this book dives into these housing types with design, layout ideas, examples, and some practical ways that you can pursue these types of developments. And then related to that this is also a wonderful book to read that falls into the category of architecture / smarter density / neighborhood design. That I really love this book. It addresses how to urbanize and densify urban areas without solely isolating people into their own indoor spaces. It's about moving people closer together and connecting them to their community and to life around them. This is a look at how urban planning should be done and largely models European cities and has case studies from Europe. For decades, much of urban planning has focused on ways to reorganize human activity into essentially distinct silos, to separate people and things in order to reduce conflict. But that's resulted in large surface parking lots. Look around your city, right? Vacant office buildings, neighborhoods that largely go dark at night and are solely car dependent. So this book is all about mixed use, combining uses in single buildings so the neighborhood is alive and active 24/7. There's some great examples here from European cities. Think of cities that we love to visit and we love to walk through: Paris, Barcelona, Amsterdam. Cities that we love to just take strolls through and go to cafes and enjoy the day-to-day activities in those cities, right? Cities that make us feel alive. We can apply, and in my business we do apply those lessons to the way that we approach mixed-use design here in the States. Multiple uses for buildings, flexibility of use, diverse building types and structures on a single block, outdoor spaces, and connection to those spaces. So again, awesome book to read. All right, number 7. This is another biography that I really enjoyed reading. Isidore Sharp built the Four Seasons Hotel Empire from scratch, based on being absolutely the best. These guys are incredible. They're the best in service and in how they treat their guests. He's built a brand name synonymous with luxury and upscale, individualized service and culture centered around delivering that service. Four Seasons, they don't compete on price ever, and they don't discount. So lots of takeaways for building a brand, delivering great service, especially if you're in hospitality and scaling businesses. For us, there were some great lessons for our short-term rental product in particular. But this book is also a great reminder to A, think bigger, and B, don't overthink stuff before diving in. His first hotel was a 200-room hotel he built when he literally knew nothing. He didn't know the first thing about hotels. He just did it. He simply trusted his gut about what would work and that he could make it work, and it turned into an empire. All right, number 8. I finished this book, just wrapped it up very recently, and it's a very good one. It's got nothing specifically to do with real estate, but is geared for any business owner or entrepreneur who is looking to level up what they're doing. And don't mistake this for that 10x internet guru bullshit. It's not about doing 10 times more or making 10 times more money. 10x in this book is a qualitative measure of what you're doing and building, and it focuses on taking your unique ability and spending as much time as possible honing that ability and applying it to your work, rather than being stuck chasing small short-term goals or doing busy work, which a lot of us find ourselves doing. Lots of important lessons in this book on focus, delegation, hiring, and building teams, having a bigger, bolder vision, and making sure that you spend your time and your life attaining true freedom of purpose, which so very few of us get to do. Highly recommend this book. I have 12 plus pages of notes on this book that I just outlined. All right, let's keep going. Number 9. This is another book that is not focused on real estate at all, yet is so applicable to how you should approach the business. I am a big fan of this author and have read most of his other books. The books are falling off my desk, so. And Infinite Game is one with no clear finish in sight. It's one with no determined winners or losers or established, fully agreed to set of rules. The goal of an infinite game is to stay in the game, not to win. So the decisions made by players in an infinite game are completely different than in a finite game. The decisions are not short-sighted, aimed at winning, rather geared to what allows one to stay in the game the longest. Examples, your life is an infinite game, right, until you die, right? But the goal is not to win at life. The goal is to have a great life. Your career is an infinite game. There's no winning in a career, right? Marriage, running a great company, all of these are infinite games. There's no really winning in any of these. So the goal is to last and to build something lasting, even something that can be passed down, especially when it comes to business. Yet so many of us are playing at business like it's a finite game. We make short-minded decisions and make short-sighted plays. We stiff a subcontractor to make an extra dollar in this deal, even though it will cost us a profitable relationship that could have lasted decades. Or we hire a C-level or a B player, right, employee to save $10,000 or $20,000 in a payroll, when we should be hiring the best in order to build a great company that lasts. Or we may obsess over a competitor in our market, as if the goal of the business is to beat them rather than build the best product we can and continue innovating. This book has the potential to really change how you view the game entirely. What you focus on, how you approach business, a team, how you approach building a team, company, culture, and how you treat almost every relationship you have. I highly, highly recommend this book. All right, and last, and possibly least, this one is a wild card. This one is weird. I was looking through my library before recording this video and found this book on my bookshelf that I read ages ago. It was written in 2005 and compiled real estate advice from 4 big-time investors and developers. There's some really good advice in this book, whether you want to acquire properties or develop them. But what was most interesting to me was to reread this advice back from 2005 and see just how much of this advice still holds true today. And 2, I wanted to track down the authors and see where these investors are now 20 years later. So what's even more interesting is that 2 out of 4 of the investors in this book, and these are all big time, 8, 9, 10 figure investors, right? Property owners. 2 out of 4 back in 2005 called the bubble, which very few professionals at the time had done. Very, very few. I went through and I looked these guys up, and what's really interesting is that I went through and I looked up these authors, especially the guys, the 2 of them that called the bubble back in 2005. And again, remember how few people actually called the bubble. And so here's what I found. One of them is Ben Leeds, and he's based in Southern California, and his portfolio is now multiples bigger than it was in 2005 because he survived the crash and doubled and tripled down. Now, I am recording this during the crazy wildfires around LA, and so I don't know as of right now how well this guy's portfolio is performing, given that they're literally concentrated in the greater Los Angeles area. It's not pretty what's happening there, but the point is, this guy survived the crash, and multiplied his portfolio. And then the other guy that called the crash, Marcel Arsenault, right? Really interesting. You can read, he, with a few others, saw the collapse of the real estate coming during the go-go days of the mid-2000s, bet against the formerly high-flying companies, sold almost all of his portfolio at the top of the market in 2006, right? Bought treasury bonds and invested in the real estate anchored by Walgreens and Walmarts that were recession-proof. And then he shorted all the companies that benefited from the real estate boom, right? He took multiple multi-million-dollar short positions against home builders. So the guy made a fortune. And so it's really interesting going back to 2005, right, and seeing where these people are now 20 years later. But again, there's a lot of really good advice in this book, whether you are investing in real estate or developing. So that's my list. Leave me your comments below. Leave me your thoughts if you've read any of these books. If you have other good book suggestions, I love reading. I'm always looking for new recommendations, and make sure you subscribe to our channel, especially if you're interested in real estate development or investing. We've got a ton of deep content on real estate, especially development, and we're adding to it regularly on our YouTube channel. So make sure you like this video, comment, subscribe to our channel. All right, we'll see you in the next one.